In this video, I'm simplifying package designs from popular brands to see if minimalism is really all it's cracked up to be. Can we simplify logos, reduce color palettes, cut out text, and still end up with a better design? You will be the judge. Up first, we have Flaming Hot Cheetos. One bag of these and your fingers basically turn to cheese. Honestly, Chester Cheetah is probably one of my favorite brand mascots of all time, but this bag design, man, I mean, it's like everything, everywhere, all at once. Kind of the definition of when everything stands out, nothing does. So let's see if we can simplify all of this and come up with something a little more focused. Let's go with a red background to help distinguish it from the orange bag of regular Cheetos. And this original logo has all sorts of effects and stuff on it, but I found this version which has nothing but flat colors, which I'll just stick right up here at the top. And here comes the first controversial change. I'm gonna make it white. Now, this isn't just because I'm trying to simplify everything, but I really just want to try to avoid every single element being yellow or red like the original design. This white text just really pops off the package a lot better, but I still might give it a touch of drop shadow to help enhance that. Chester, unfortunately, won't be making an appearance on the new design, but I do still want to show off the actual Cheetos. I just don't need 6 of them. One will do just fine. And then a camera raw filter will help me crank up that texture to make that feel extra crunchy. Like the original package, I want to use fire to show that these Cheetos are hot, but this thing has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different flames. How many flames do you need? And look at these. They literally just made a fire shape, slapped a flaming texture on it, and didn't even care if the shapes lined up at all. I mean, I guess that works. For my design though, I don't really want to go with a realistic fire, just because the overall brand feels more cartoony and illustrated to me. So I'll just go with a more flat flame like this. But you know, I do like the way they did this flat flame over here, where it actually casts a shadow onto the bag, almost like this is a paper fire or something. And a quick designer's PSA, if I ever catch any of you out there making shadows this hideous of a color, I will take away your design license. Why would you ever use black shadows on a yellow background? Just use orange. See how much nicer that looks? You don't have all those ugly green colors in there. Anyways, back to the fire. So all I did was stack up a few different flame layers, making each one more red the further back in the stack it was. To get that papery layered feeling, I made each one cast a subtle shadow onto the next. I finished up with some gradients and a small rim light along the edges, which just helps each layer feel like it has a bit of depth. Now, even though this fire is supposed to be made of paper, I still think it would look really cool if it was casting out light like a real fire would. So I'm just gonna darken up the bag right around the edges, leaving the area right around the fire still lit up. A little extra yellow right around here for some added intensity. And you know what I'd really like to do is make this entire thing feel like it's on one of those photography sets, you know, like the ones with the smooth little backdrops and maybe there's a spotlight shining down on everything. So let me just get that spotlight in here. We're just gonna make this Cheeto cast a shadow on the ground, and we'll just adjust the lighting on the actual Cheeto. And lastly, a little rim light from the fire. And of course, our paper fire is going to be casting a shadow onto that back wall. I think that's all working pretty good. Now let's just take care of the Flamin' Hot logo, which I'm going to stick right up here. I just want to darken up the stroke and tone down those highlights. Then I'm just going to bend that so it matches the shape of the logo right above it, and that'll just help both of these things feel more like a single unit. Then we just pop in the net weight and the product description, and this packaging is done. I think this has a lot of the same energy the original has, but it's certainly much clearer and a lot more readable. Dawn is a name you've likely heard if you've ever washed your dishes, and the thing they're kind of known for is donating soap to help clean animals mucked up by oil spills in the ocean, hence the baby ducks. So first off, let's simplify this logo. It's got a lot of effects right now, but the overall structure is pretty good. So let me just grab a copy of that and do a little selection wizardry to get a solid white version of that text, which I think should stand out quite nicely on this blue bottle. Now maybe I can just trace the shape of that original circle and then make that dark blue so it stands out from the soap behind it, but it also won't compete too much with the logo text. Maybe just nudge that down a bit so it's more centered. Basically, I've just inverted the original logo, but I think it looks nice. So I do like these little ducks over on the original, but in the pursuit of simplicity, one of them is going to be exterminated and the other is going to get turned into a simple illustration. So we'll start off with the head of our little duck, then comes the body, a cute little beak, a couple of eyes, and I'll finish it off with a touch of shading. And we have a duck. You know, it's interesting, this rim on the bottle kind of looks like a wave of water. So what if I masked out our little ducky to make it look like he's riding that wave? I like it. Suppose we should tell people this is dishwashing liquid, add in all that legal mumbo jumbo, and all this other text on the original package is just marketing fluff really, not really something a design minimalist needs. Finally, I'm just gonna add some subtle gradients on the logo and on the duck, just so those images won't be overly flat. This new design definitely has that certain charm to it, and that cute little duck really hammers home the nature part of Dawn's brand. And now we have Gatorade, probably the most popular sports drink in the entire world. But here's the thing, I really don't like the packaging. I mean, do you guys? I think it's mainly just all the gray. Like, what's up with that? It just feels very Windows 95 or something. And on top of that, we've got a lightning bolt stamped into the bottle, another carved out of the label, and even one more right here on the logo. It's like, how many lightning bolts do we really need? Well, I guess my first step to simplifying all this is to just get rid of this big cutout in the label. And yes, getting this entire thing to look like a solid blank label was just as tedious as you might imagine. Now, instead of Tin Man grade, I'm gonna go with black, which I think not only looks better against the colored drink, but it just feels more athletic to me, which is their target market. Now we can just get that logo on here, make it a bit bigger, and it honestly baffles me that Gatorade made their name so small on the original design. I mean, most companies want their logo as big as humanly possible, so I think a better idea is to stick it right here underneath the G, size it up to be the same width, and that should at least help people unfamiliar with the brand learn the name. Let's see, thirst quencher I don't think we really need. The flavor though, well, that would look good right down here in maybe some kind of slanted, athletic looking font, and of course we'll have that match the color of the drink. Get that legal text in right down here, and I'm just gonna borrow this little guy, don't tell anyone, and stick him right over here. And lastly, I do actually think it's pretty cool to have something cut out of the label. I just think a much better spot to do that would be right here. See, if we cut out this little bolt, then that drink behind it will end up coloring it in, which I actually think is really cool because the lightning bolt is gonna match the color of the Gatorade that you're drinking. Well, I gotta say, I really like this minimalistic design. The aesthetic, the colors, the cutout are all much better in my opinion. And next up on the docket, we have Orbit. Now with an even cleaner feeling, whatever that means. This package has so much going on. It's clear they like circles, which makes sense because the name is Orbit, but I'm not sure what's going on with all these patterns. And bro, who could even read this? It's just, I don't know. Well, let's at least go ahead and start off with the same green background, because that's actually quite a nice color. Then I'll just snag a copy of the logo and throw that into Illustrator. Then I can come over here and image trace it, get rid of all these little extra parts, and we're left with a nice clean white version that we can add right in here. Just need to add that cutout back into the O, and we're good. Wait a second, these are not the same logos. The original has a much lower B stem, and then this I needs to be raised. Okay, now we are close enough. Let's put the Wrigley's logo right up here so it can be seen, instead of smushed down here in a size 4 font. I do actually like the idea of circles surrounding the O like they've got it here, but what if instead of all this, we just made them simple solid colors, kind of like this, radiating out from that central O, making those darker the further out they go, which ends up giving us this really cool little burst effect. I think a little shadow would be nice to help us separate these layers, but all this does make the text a bit hard to read, especially around this area. So I can just come in here with a soft brush and paint a lighter green color behind it to form a smoother background for the logo. A little shade over on this side, and I'll stick the flavor of the gum right down here, which happens to be artificially flavored. Who would have guessed? And as a small homage to all the patterns in this original package, maybe a little circle texture right up here in the corner to help fill in some of that space. This is definitely one of my favorite redesigns of the video so far. It's modern, clean, and it still has a lot of character and movement through those simple elements. And last up we have Campbell's tomato soup. This is a super iconic brand, and there's even a famous painting done of it, which is worth the same as 6 Bugattis, by the way. Campbell's has actually redesigned their packaging several times since they started back in 1895 with the general trend of getting simpler each time, until they reached this. Now you might say this design is already super simple, which is correct, but to the true minimalist, even this is far too complex. We don't need this little gold seal or all these little frilly things. Heck, we may just make the can solid red and let the brand speak for itself. Okay, I'm not gonna go that far, but I do think a red background would be a good jumping off point, upon which I can place the logo, maybe rotate it a bit so that these slanted letters are straight up and down, which also lets me make it bigger. That way the logo can be a central element to this design since it's so recognizable. Out of all the other elements in the original design, I feel like the tomato is probably the most necessary. So I'll just go tomato shopping here, and this little guy looks pretty nice. So I'll get him and then stick him right here at the bottom. And my idea here is to just kind of fade out this tomato, kind of like we're making the entire can feel like the tomato. Just need to adjust the levels a bit to help smooth out that blending, and perhaps a touch of darker red right behind it to help that top stand out. And of course, people need to know this is tomato soup. And I'll leave that pretty small just because the tomato is already a big visual indicator of what kind of soup this is, but I do want a font with a little more flair. And a bit of a pro tip here, spreading out the letters helps basically any font feel more fancy. Then the condensed text can go right down here, and I'll even make it gold to keep the original can's color scheme going. And we're left with a design that keeps a lot of the same visual traits as the original, but with more focus on the Campbell's logo and that big red tomato. And it looks like 70% of you are still not subscribed, so go subscribe. If you want to see me make simple designs more complex instead, go watch this video.